Welcome A-level geography students to this explainer. Today we're jumping right into the hidden and honestly beautifully complex underground world of hydrology. We're going to unpack the exact systems driving groundwater extraction. If you've ever wondered where our water actually comes from when rivers run completely dry, or how entire cities survive on ancient hidden underground reservoirs, well, you're in exactly the right place. Here is our roadmap for today. We're looking at the hidden groundwater store, artesian basins and pressure, and then we'll dive into two real-world case studies, the River Kennet and the London Basin. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the hidden groundwater store. Before we hit the dramatic case studies, we've got to lock down the foundational mechanics. First up, let's clear up a massive A-level stumbling block right off the bat. You'll see the terms groundwater extraction and groundwater abstraction used interchangeably all the time in your textbooks. Here is the insider tip. They are the exact same thing. Don't let an exam paper trick you. Whether they say abstraction or extraction, it literally just means the physical removal of water from rivers or aquifers. So where are we actually pulling this water from? An aquifer. Picture an aquifer as this massive underground store of water locked inside sedimentary permeable rock. It acts kind of like a giant geological sponge. But for that sponge to actually hold water, it needs a solid plate underneath it, right? That plate is an impermeable rock layer. Because it has no pores or just tiny disconnected ones, it completely stops the water from escaping downwards, which lets the aquifer fill up. Now, if you go below the water table, which is just the top limit of the wet rock, you hit the saturation zone. Down here, the rock is incredibly porous. I want you to visualize these microscopic pore spaces just absolutely packed with glowing water droplets. The rock is 100% saturated. It couldn't hold a single drop more if it tried. Above the water table, though, the rock is mostly dry, and those exact same pores are just filled with air. To really understand how that water gets down there in the first place, we have to use our systems theory toolkit. We've got to look at this strictly through the lens of inputs, processes, outputs, and the stores themselves.
Let's trace a single drop of winter rain to see this whole system in action. That rainwater, that's our initial input. It hits the ground, infiltrates the top layer of soil, and then percolates slowly downwards through the dry rock. That's what we call the aeration zone. Finally, it hits the water table. This triggers groundwater recharge. It's the absolutely crucial process that tops up our underground saturated store for the entire year.
So here's a hinge question to test your system's thinking. Think about it for a second. Is groundwater recharge an input, or is it a flow? Well, it's actually a bit of a trick question, because it's both. It's an input directly into the groundwater store, but it also represents a vertical flow of water, all the way from the surface down through the soil and rock, right into the aquifer itself. Section 2, Artesian Basins and Pressure. Now that we've mastered the basic aquifer, let's turn up the pressure and see what happens when the geology gets a little warped. Millions of years ago, extreme compressional tectonic forces forced rock strata to fold downwards into a massive U-shape. In geography, we call this a syncline. When a layer of permeable rock, our aquifer, gets warped like this, and is perfectly sandwiched between two layers of impermeable rock above and below it, it forms an artesian basin. The water gets perfectly locked right in the middle. This structure is essentially a giant geological pressure cooker. Rainwater enters at the exposed higher edges, travels deep down to the center, and gets trapped. The sheer weight of all that groundwater pushing down from the edges massively pressurizes the water trapped at the bottom. So what do you think happens when we come along and drill a borehole straight down through that top impermeable layer, right into this highly pressurized aquifer? Boom! You get an artesian well. Because this water is under such intense artesian pressure, you literally don't even need a pump. The pressure is instantly released, and the groundwater shoots violently up the borehole, spraying a massive, fluffy, natural fountain high into the air. It is an absolutely incredible display of hydraulic force.
Section 3, Case Study River Kennet. Let's see how all this theory applies to the real world, starting with the impacts of human abstraction on the River Kennet in Wiltshire.
To really grasp what's happening at the River Kennet, we have to talk about base flow. This is super important. Aquifers don't just sit there doing nothing. The water table actually naturally intersects with our surface river valleys. Groundwater slowly flows sideways through the rock as base flow. This provides a steady, vital input of clear water directly into the river channel, which is exactly why rivers keep flowing beautifully even when it hasn't rained for months.
But here's where human activity totally derails the natural dynamic equilibrium. In the River Kennet catchment, human abstraction, pumping water out for our growing towns and vast agriculture, often way outpaces the natural winter recharge. When we take out more than nature puts back in, the store depletes massively. The water table drops. And when that water table drops below the riverbed, that vital base flow stops entirely, leaving the River Kennet drastically reduced or even completely bone dry.
Section 4, Case Study, London Basin. For our final case study, we're looking at a dramatic, century-spanning story of intense human disturbance and, incredibly, environmental recovery right in the UK's capital.
The geology of London is literally a textbook example of an Artesian basin. It's a massive syncline. The permeable aquifer is made of chalk, exposed at the outer edges in the Chiltern Hills and the North Downs, which is exactly where the rainwater enters. This chalk layer dips right underneath the city, perfectly sandwiched between a thick layer of impermeable London clay resting on top and another impermeable layer, Galt clay, acting as a solid base underneath. This massive U-shaped structure historically created immense Artesian pressure. Get this, back in 1845, when the iconic fountains in Trafalgar Square were first built, they were powered purely by this natural Artesian pressure. No electrical pumps at all. But by the 1930s, heavy industrial over-abstraction plummeting the water table. We depleted the store so badly the pressure failed, the fountains died, and the city had to install electrical pumps just to keep them going. Thankfully, though, modern water management strategies have strictly limited that industrial extraction. This allowed the groundwater store to recover, enhancing the aquifer and letting those deep water levels successfully rise once again.
But we definitely have to remain vigilant. Managing these stores is incredibly serious business today. Just look at this Guardian headline. United Utilities was recently fined a massive £800,000 for unlawfully taking 22 billion liters of water from an aquifer. That is a staggering penalty, but it proves the vital point. Over-extracting threatens the delicate balance of these vital stores, and regulators are stepping in hard to protect our groundwater. Which brings us to the future. As you review your systems diagrams for your exams, I want you to consider this final critical question. If climate change severely alters our winter rainfall patterns, causing natural recharge to fail, how on earth will we manage the massive artesian and groundwater stores that our cities and rivers rely on to survive? Keep that in mind as you study. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.